Okay, this is the last part of this section on ride-hailing and transportation systems, and it goes into some rather detailed AI, looking at the approaches to trying to solve these routing and logistics issues of where the riders are expected to be and where the cars ought to be, and things like that. And as we've noted already and see it summarized at the end, because so much money has been spent on the AI for the ride-hailing problems, this field is actually ahead in this general class of AI application, which is called a time series. You have a set of data measurements which intrinsically are arranged in time, and that time, the variation with time, is a very important part of the data. So there are some that is actually very important. Speech is another example, which a time series. As I burble on, I have a set of words which are related in time, but also they're related semantically. The same is true in ride-hailing. What happens on a road is related on time, but also related semantically, because it's related to what happens on other roads. It's related to the number of vehicles on any other road. And so there's a very interesting mixture of the timing and the spatial structure. And in the case of, say, language, the relationships between the timing and the meaning of a sentence or the meaning of a paragraph. And the same type of hierarchical arrangements is also seen in ride-hailing, where you have different time scales. Minutes are the local accidents. There is the time of day effect, and there is the weekly recurrence effect. So all of these are present across a wide range of time series problems. Thank you. And we learned about long short-term memory networks, which are one of the more sophisticated recurrent neural nets. This problem is a natural for recurrent networks because it's time series, and recurrent networks are designed to do time series. And autoencoder is trying to abstract the essence of the problem, and so that could represent the overall traffic density. And then you can combine the LSTM and the autoencoder to get the answer. So here we have results from this new method, which is the deep LSTM mixture model, which is this one here, which is always the smallest. And you can see if it's projecting from 5 minutes to 60 minutes into the future. They're not here trying to do climate forecasts of years ahead. But just, I mean, for Uber and Lyft, I would say they probably only need the next, an hour or two is all they need, because things change so rapidly and also their cars can self-adjust on that type of period. So they don't need to do a huge time into the future. Here is the non-peak hour with errors of around 5.5%. Similar results here for peak hours, although the less sophisticated methods do much worse in this case here. The historical average doesn't have the peak built into it. But here for 60-minute forecasts, these errors have jumped up, and actually for both non-peak hour and peak hour they've jumped up, and are now near 10% or 8% for the deep mixture model. In any case, it certainly is always better than the other methods. These are these other methods: historical average, in some cases the regression model, and ARIMA is a standard model used in time series, and the data is actually pretty old data. And here we have some post-accident forecasting, and again this deep mixture here is doing better This one has got a 1% error, and these are probably the ones to look at, these methods here, and I would say they're typically better than 30% as plotted here, but these key ones here, maybe it's only a little over 30% better. So you can also use a convolutional neural net, viewing this whole thing as an image, and there are quite a few times with deep learning as we haven't gone through the theory, that's not obvious, where we actually take a problem which is not normally thought of as an image and think of it as an image, because then we know how to apply convolutional neural nets to it. So here we're trying to predict traffic throughput, speed of traffic. Now here's a result which I think is the most sophisticated, where you think of things as graphs, and you connect the graphs by links, which and you can actually look at several different graphs: the road network graph, the graph that is formed by things being near each other, the locality graph. That's a very standard graph. And here we have a slightly more subtle graph, the graph of functional relationship. Police stations tend to have the same effect on traffic, namely calming it down wherever they're placed. And as always in these problems, you define distances, and you weight you have links between the graphs, and nearby points are linked together with a weight that is reflects the distance you choose for the problem. This comes from I think the Yan Liu Diffusion Convolution Recurrent Neural Net, which mixes these convolutional methods for the graph and LSTM for the time series. And it's pretty sophisticated, and we have not succeeded in reproducing the results yet. But I think it's amazing that such a commodity problem has such a sophisticated approach. So here, we've seen this data set, these data sets before, 2012, and then we have a 2017 data set, and you can see that they have data spread around the major freeways in Los Angeles and the Bay Area. And you have different forecasting methods. Again, we're looking at the mean absolute error, which is in the 2 to 5% range. It actually does better in the Bay Area than it does in Los Angeles, but always the one which mixes LSTM and graph convolutional networks does better. And if you take this best method and remove the spatial part, which is green, or remove the temporal part, which is blue, you get worse answers. Interesting, if you're doing 15 minutes, the spatial part's most important because there's not much happening in time. If you're doing 1 hour, the time part is most important, and removing the time makes the most difference. An interesting effect. Here is a picture of the sort of DD in Beijing, and some sort of display of what's going on and the various functions that are supported by, remember, that transportation brain. So this is what the brain is trying to understand. I at least think that this problem is quite clear. You ought to be able to do it because everything is, we have a good intuition as to what affects what, and that actually makes it much easier to build a good deep learning network. I pointed out these 3 graphs. This illustrates the graphs. There was the well, here we have region 1, is connected to region 2 spatially. Region 4 is connected by the road. Spatially is the neighborhood. And region 3, they're both schools. 3 is connected to 1 by both being schools. So you see here on this single graph the 3 types of networks: the local network connecting 1 and 2, the road network connecting 1 and 2 to 4 to 6, and then the similarity in function connecting 1 to 3, and I don't think 5 has not got anything special connecting it to. And then we just have to forecast these traffic densities. And we do that by getting the graph. G is graph here, R is recurrent, C is convolutional. And there's this pretty interesting paper by Gang et al. These are quite hard problems in my opinion. This points out that the problem of matching drivers to passengers, here's the passengers, here's the cars, is non-trivial. It's such problems have been actually looked at within the computer science literature, but they're still non-trivial. And it's a large-scale distributed computing problem related to scheduling problems that we look at. And you can actually see that when you order an Uber or a Lyft, or actually in Milan, it was particularly dramatic, where they spend a huge amount of time and sometimes fail to find a ride. But it's non-trivial time to get the right link. Of course, the driver has to agree to do it, so it's more than just identifying the driver. Here is a comparison of all these different methods for Beijing and Shanghai. This is work by Didi with the USC group, and the fanciest method gives the best answers always. And there's something much better than traditional machine learning. in some cases, they have 2 measures of error: root mean square and mean absolute precision. And only these are the only viable methods, these bottom 4. And they're all sophisticated deep learning methods. Well, here is an interesting comment about how the next generation will actually use reinforcement learning to maximize the driver's experience, including their income. And you also have to maximize the driver's experience and the customer's experience. So you want them both to be happy. And you have the reward, which is the happiness over, say, the day. And you have to look at the impact of the current decision. I mean, if you send somebody to a place they can't get out of, which again, I remember in one place I went to, I couldn't get out of it because Uber wouldn't send anybody there because there was too much traffic to get out, so I had to walk. And so here we have, I point out how this can be generalized to a general geospatial time series, which is a mixture of a recurrent and a convolutional. And there are many methods that have been looked at, including actually replacing the recurrent via one of these new sequence-to-sequence networks, which are used in speech recognition, which no longer use LSTM. And we can look at traffic, cars and runners in a race, ride-hailing cars, earthquakes, what have you. And they all should be tackled by the same type of problem. So I think this is a really amazing area where fundamentally new ideas in geospatial time series have been produced by the ride-hailing industry and the highly qualified academic partners. All right, so that's it, the end of our discussion of ride-hailing. Thank you very much.